She was set on punishing Sophie.
I saw the smoke coming from the garden.
What he saw shocked him to the core. The following stories tell the horrifying tale of babysitters who were killed or who killed in the most gruesome way. Our first story takes us to Southfields in London, UK. It's a very peaceful suburb close to Wimbledon Park where everyone knows each other, so there's a strong sense of community.
We've lived here all our lives. It's a very friendly place to live, very safe place to live. People know each other because they stay here a long time.
Most of all, Southfield is very family friendly. Most people move there to raise a family, and mothers and nannies are a common sight around the area.
So we know each other, everybody knows moms, the nannies. This is what Southfield is, family oriented.
But one of these families was hiding a very dark secret. Sabrina Quidare and Wissam Medouni had met in 2001 and had an on and off relationship ever since. Sabrina worked as a fashion designer and Sam as a financial analyst. They were doing pretty well. And in 2013, they were ready to move in together and start a family. But Sabrina had quite a few unaddressed issues. Before moving in with Wissam, she had dated Mark Walton, one of the founding members of Boyzone. The relationship didn't work out. In fact, the couple split in 2013, the same year Sabrina moved in with Sam. But Sabrina had become obsessed with Mark. If she couldn't have him, she wanted him punished. She continued to contact him and threaten him in the most outrageous ways. She falsely reported him to the police over 20 times, and once she accused him of sexually assaulting her cat. She didn't even have a cat. Mark himself said that when they were together, she would make up dreadful stories about people, often of a sexual nature, and she would pick on those she saw as weak.
She appeared to him to be a volatile character and prone to mood swings, but she also had something of a hold over him. She was prone to outbursts, to shouting at random people in the street and acting in a strange and volatile manner.
Apparently, Sabrina was the one who left the relationship in 2013, but Mark agreed to pay the first few months of rent to her new house. When he stopped, she became enraged.
She didn't take the breakdown well. She wouldn't have taken the breakdown well. It's the kind of person that she is, and she became fixated on either getting him back, getting control back over him, or if she couldn't do that, getting revenge.
Sabrina became increasingly volatile over the years, and people in the Suffield community started to notice her outbursts more and more.
She was quite volatile and vocal in her mannerisms with this dispute. It was always probably her way or no way.
Sabrina had called the police on Mr. Patel just because he didn't have what she wanted. And when Sabrina and Sam started a family together, they became a toxic duo. Even though he'd known Sabrina since childhood, Sam was never a steady partner, often disappearing from their flat for months on end. But when he was with Sabrina, Sam supported her paranoia and did everything he could to punish those Sabrina wanted to destroy. Unfortunately, all of their shared psychoses would pour over their brand new nanny, a 20-year-old French girl called Sophie Lionnet.
Sophie is a nice girl, always smiling, who loves life and had a joy of living. She was shy, yes. We spoke very little. It was always necessary to tear the words from her mouth so that she could speak with us.
Sophia had studied early years education in France and wanted to improve her English, so in January 2016, she responded to an advert for working as a nanny in London. This was the perfect opportunity, she thought. She would stay with a fairly young and pretty rich couple, Sabrina and Sam, who lived in the peaceful Southfields. What could go wrong? Tragically, everything. But Sophie was too shy to ask for help.
I don't think she had a social life at all.
I never seen Sophie with anyone. There's so many nannies around in Southfield. They are very happy. They meet up on weekends. They even come to my restaurant. They bring the kids. They're all grouped up. They have a social life as well. But Sophie never had that.
At first, Sophie seemed happy to be working with Sabrina's 2 children.
As this home video filmed in the Southfields flat shows, she seemed happy.
She was extremely dedicated to the extent that their neighbors thought she was a part of the family. No one would do that much work for just the money, they thought. Sophie, shy as she was, rarely interacted with anyone outside the family, but she did become friends with Sabrina's friend, Jolanta.
It was my dream to learn French, and she offered for me to help me with that.
Sabrina told Jolanta that she would stay in the UK for a few months and then return to France to study film. Unfortunately, she would never leave the country. In the summer of 2017, Sabrina started accusing Sophie of sleeping with her ex, Mark Walton. As Sophie kept saying she'd never even heard of Mark and asking Sabrina to stop, she and Sam started torturing her. First, they starved her.
Whenever she comes, I offer her food. She only has a portion of chips and a drink, and she eats it so fast the way she eats. Either she's not fed or she's rushing back to work.
This lasted for months. People started noticing that Sophie was wearing the same clothes and had stopped brushing her hair. Sabrina was now broke and also refused to pay Sophie's wages. Jolanta offered her part-time work at the nail salon, but Sabrina forced her to stop all contact with Sophie.
I think that Sophie was controlled by Sabrina. She couldn't decide by herself where she can go, and I haven't even noticed that she had her own free time.
Sophie wanted to fly back to France, but Sabrina had taken away her passport and she had no money. Michael Cromer offered her the money for a plane ticket, but she was too afraid to accept.
I said, well, if it is that, why don't you fly to France and I can even buy you a ticket. When you are paid, you can give me the money. I offered that to her. She didn't give me a positive answer, neither yes or neither no. She was just nodding her head.
Sophie then texted her mom, saying she needs to come back home but she doesn't have the money to get a ticket. Her mom sent her the money once she got her paycheck, but then Sabrina called her.
Sabrina had told me that she was keeping Sophie because there were disagreements and problems she wanted to solve. I said to Sabrina, listen, do your best to make her come home.
But that wasn't Sabrina's intention. She was set on punishing Sophie for her delusional obsession with Mark. She started beating Sophie and accusing her of stealing things from the house.
She actually started to cry, and then I had to ask her what happened. At that point she said Sabrina beat her.
Michael started making arrangements to get Sophie a job at a local restaurant. The moment she found out, Sabrina stormed into his chip shop, dragging Sophie by her arm.
I was just setting my table chairs outside, and she started to scream at me very loud, and she didn't let Sophie speak, and she went screaming at Sophie in French.
This is the last scene Michael saw of Sabrina and Sophie. He knew something was wrong, but neither he nor anyone else would imagine what Sabrina and Sam would actually do to poor Sophie. On September 19th, 2017, Sabrina's neighbors noticed thick, foul-smelling smoke coming from their garden.
I saw the smoke coming from the garden. It was directly on the street, so you could not see it.
My husband, he went to the corner shop, and as he passed the house, he noticed the smoke.
He could see Sam monitoring the smoke, so he thought that he didn't need to call the firefighters, as Sam had probably done so. But a few more minutes had passed when another worried neighbor dialed 999. Soon, a huge fire brigade and several police cars were at Sabrina and Sam's house. The police blocked off the road and put a white tent over their garden. Everyone was at a loss.
We couldn't understand why there was the tent there, why the police were there over a fire. It didn't make sense to us. And then we saw Sam being escorted out of the house with handcuffs.
The police found a nose and fingers in the fire. Sam was cooking chicken on a barbecue nearby, trying to hide the smell. Sophie's body had been burned so badly, the police couldn't identify the cause of death. She had been wounded, starved, and beaten. She had a broken jaw and several broken ribs at the time of her death. Once the police arrested Sabrina and Sam, Sabrina started screaming that she didn't do it. Sam was just a brooding, quiet figure. Sophie's mom arrived at the trial, still finding it hard to believe what had happened.
It was the first time I saw them. It hurt me, because they had taken my daughter. They had broken everyone's heart. And all the hurt they had done to Sophie, I I could not accept.
Sophie and Sam admitted to burning Sophie, but they both denied killing her. Also, each of them pointed their finger at the other, claiming that they were asleep when the other killed her. But soon enough, the police unraveled a series of horrific recordings of Sabrina and Sam interrogating Sophie in the most gruesome way you can imagine. Sabrina wanted Sophie to admit that she had slept with Mark.
I will not leave you alone until you tell me the truth. Is this clear? Do you understand?
Sabrina was convinced Mark and Sophie were not only sleeping together, but spying on her and trying to destroy her life. She kept threatening Sophie that she will spend her life in prison for what she has done.
Think carefully about 40 years in prison. Close your eyes for 1 minute, okay? Imagine yourself every day in a cage like an animal.
On September 18th, Sophie falsely admitted to sleeping with Mark just so that the torture would stop. Sabrina filmed her confession. Just look at what Sophie looked like on her last day. Sabrina had what she wanted, a confession. She now had the motive to kill Sophie. Even if both Sabrina and Sam were trying to blame each other for the murder, one neighbor had heard both of them in the bathroom with Sabrina on the night of her death saying, "Breathe, breathe."
That was a critical piece of evidence because neither one of the defendants was really telling the truth.
Both were charged with the murder of Sophie and are facing life in prison, just like they once threatened Sophie. Sophie was a young, hopeful person who became manipulated, controlled, and physically and mentally tortured to the extent that she couldn't leave the house of horrors. It's a tragic story that will haunt her family forever. This next story takes us to Manhattan, New York in 2012. This was the home of happy parents Kevin and Marina Krim. They had 3 children, 6-year-old Lulu, 3-year-old Inez, and Leo, who was 2. Kevin and Marina lived typical New York busy lives, meaning they had little time to care for their children. So they hired a nanny, Yoselin Ortega, who would make sure that the kids got home from school, swimming, or any other activities. On October 25th, 2012, Yoselin was able to take Leo home and Lulu to her dance class, while Marina took Inez to her swim class. When Nezi's swim class was over, Marina and she went over to Lulu's dance class to take her home, but Lulu had never made it to the dance class. Marina immediately messaged Yoselin, but she didn't reply. So at 5:30 p.m., Marina and Nessie arrived home, eager to find out what happened with Yoselin. They found their home in complete darkness and utter silence, except for a ray of light coming from the bathroom. The house was so quiet that Marina was convinced Yoselin had taken the kids to Central Park, which was about half a block away from their apartment. She went downstairs to the doorman and asked him if he'd seen Yoselin with her kids, but he hadn't. So she went back upstairs, more confused than ever. This time Marina checked the bathroom, and inside the tub were the lifeless bodies of Lulu and Leo.
Marina Krim opened the bathroom door and saw the lifeless bodies of her 6-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son stacked in the bathtub, their eyes open, covered in blood, staring ahead.
Yoselin had stabbed them with a large kitchen knife.
The defendants slit the throats of the children to be sure that neither could scream out for help.
Then Yoselin stabbed herself in the neck and wrists, but she was still alive. This was beyond anything Marina or Kevin could handle. Their despair made the headlines throughout the country. It made no sense. Why would a nanny who had been with the family for 2 years decide to slay 2 innocent children overnight? She had been a good friend to the family, and the Krims even took a family trip to the Dominican Republic, staying with Yoselin's sister for 9 days the year before. On the day of the murders, Yoselin was rushed to the hospital and treated for multiple self-inflicted wounds. Meanwhile, the police were trying to gather all the relevant information on this case, so they spoke to their first witnesses.
The first witness after Marina Krim was a former doorman at the building. Thomas Brown testified the nanny never said a word to him over the months that he worked there until the day of the murders.
Just before taking Lulu and Leo upstairs to their deaths, Yoselin asked Thomas if the mom was home. Thomas said no, and Yoselin was ready to carry out her sick plan. So, what drove Yoselin to brutally take the lives of 2 children and then attempt to take her own? When Marina finally found it in herself to testify at the trial, she remembered a strange moment a few weeks before the murders. She saw Yaslin looking at me with this glare on her face that was just pure evil. A really weird, mean look. Criminal psychologists started looking into Yaslin's case and the dead eyes that she had throughout her trial. Perhaps an average person seeing Yaslin's expressionless face will assume that she is pure evil. But criminal psychologists found a feeling behind this: resentment towards the Krim family.
Resentment is a form of anger, but it's not the explosive anger. It's when you hold stuff in, angry feelings or feelings of shame that you don't address, that it can turn into resentment. Once resentment builds, you'll start noticing that you're annoyed with your partner. You don't want to be around them. You don't like them. It can even turn into hate and disgust of your partner.
Except in Yaslin's case, it wasn't her partner she hated. It was the rich, happy Krims and their 3 beautiful children. Yaslin's resentment started with envy. She was a 50-year-old immigrant from the Dominican Republic who had grown up in poverty and was currently living on Riverside Drive in Manhattan's Hamilton Heights neighborhood. She had a 17-year-old son, Jesus, and they lived with her sister and her niece. She could barely make ends meet to support her son and the overall expensive New York life with the $18 an hour that she got from Marina. Apparently, Yaslin had asked Marina to do more housework for more money, but Marina said they didn't need any more help at the moment. Moreover, apparently Marina was upset with Yaslin for feeding the children junk food. Yaslin became upset, then enraged with the family. She started blaming them for her unhappiness. During the trial in 2018, Marina gave a long, heartbreaking statement about what the family had to go through because of Yaslin. She also addressed a large part of it to her surviving daughter, Inez.
I wrote this statement knowing that in the future, Nessie will read this. When she does, I want her to know that this crime was not just committed by one evil person. It was a conspiracy by an entire family of bad, unethical people.
Marina blamed Yaslin's whole family for harboring resentment towards them. While Yaslin carried out the murders, it was her family who encouraged her hatred. Yaslin's sister, on the other hand, said she had no idea what had been going on in Yaslin's mind. She'd only noticed her complaining about money. She snapped. We don't understand what happened to her mind. Yaslin just stood there with a poker face, not saying anything and not showing any remorse. Finally, a verdict was reached.
For murder in the first degree, 2 counts, you're sentenced to the maximum penalty of the rest of your life in state prison, no possibility of parole.
Kevin showed all his anger towards Yaslin, agreeing she should rot in prison.
The defendant is an evil and utterly dangerous narcissist and a complete failure. It is right that she should live and rot and die in a concrete and metal cage, like the ugly, dark shadow of Lulu and Leo's bright, shining lights.
Marina, on the other hand, spoke of their badass daughter Inez and the family becoming stronger, step by step.
Patiently and with great determination, we rebuilt our lives. My family and I, we create and build.
Finally, Yaslin broke down and expressed her remorse in front of the heartbroken family.
I'm very sorry for everything that happened. But I hope that no one, or people who goes through what I have gone through.
Yaslin will have her whole life to think about how she destroyed the lives of an innocent family, but the Krims are determined to be happy once more. As of 2018, the Krims, who have had 2 more sons since 2012, set up the Lulu and Leo Fund, helping children in the US become more creative and socially empowered. This last story takes us to Iowa State in 2019. Mother and child welfare officer Desiree LeBlanc was looking for a good daycare provider for her baby daughter when she got a recommendation for 28-year-old Christina Williamson.
I thought she was a great person, a great daycare provider, that I trusted her completely.
As Desiree's career revolved around stopping child abuse, she did a serious research on Christina before hiring her.
I worked for the Department of Human Services at that time. I was a child protective investigator. As a DHS worker, I've done hundreds of of cases, and
I'm trained to see things. I have seen virtually every type of child abuse that there is.
Christina's online profile looked squeaky clean. She was married, and it looked like she loved children more than anything else. She ran a trusted daycare from her own spacious home, which Desiree was quick to check.
So I met with Christina. Her home was immaculate. Everything was neat. There was tubs of toys, easels, ride-on toys. The basement opened up into the backyard with sliding doors, so she was able to have the kids go outside. Everything was always very neat and orderly.
During her interview and home visit, Christina gave all the right impressions to Desiree. Soon enough, she was hired, and Desiree's baby girl was in her care, along with several other babies. Over the next few months, it seemed like Desiree had made the right choice.
She seemed extremely attentive. She was constantly sending photographs letting us know that everything was okay, and then if there was ever a concern, she would equally message right away and say that our daughter scratched herself on whatever, and a picture that would show us a scratch.
But there's a very upsetting twist to this. It wasn't the daughter that was scratching herself. Christina also had an 8-year-old boy in her care. One day, he complained to Christina's husband that she had been violent to the babies. Her husband had been suspecting foul behavior for a while, and Christina would always lie about it. So he decided to take action. He installed a hidden camera in the corner of their living room. What he saw shocked him to the core. Christina viciously grabs babies by their arms and heads, sweeping them around like objects. She steps on them, stuffs clothes in their mouths, and at one point, she folds Desiree's daughter and presses on her torso for 90 seconds, as if to strangle her. That day, Christina's soon-to-be ex-husband took the video recording to the local police.
Christina's husband discovered what was on the tape, then he took action. Pleasant Hill Police Department then reviewed the videotape and contacted the Polk County Attorney's Office.
Every officer who saw the videos was absolutely sickened. These were small babies, some of them just months old, being thrown around, left unattended for hours, and abused in ways that no child should experience.
Well, it makes you sick to see a little infant, having things done to them. They can't say anything, they can't protect themselves, they're totally unprotected, and for an adult to do that, it really upsets you.
Desiree received a distressing phone call. She couldn't believe what the police officers told her.
With our daughter, the videos show her sleeping and Christina yanking her up by the arm and flinging her onto the floor. They show her picking her up by her head. She pushes our daughter down so that she's folded in half, and she holds her that way for about 90 seconds.
Desiree's world had been turned upside down. She had dedicated her whole life to stopping child abuse, and yet her own child was being abused without her knowledge. She felt like she couldn't trust herself or anyone else ever again.
It was just horrifying. It was just awful.
Finally, Christina Williamson was arrested and charged with 4 counts of child endangerment, causing bodily injury, and 1 lesser charge of endangerment. Christina worked with her defense attorney and agreed to plead guilty to the lesser charges.
Ms. Williamson, how do you plead to count 1?
Guilty.
But she didn't admit to the full extent of what she'd done. However, she was asked to give a full account of everything that was shown in the video recording.
I handled AN roughly and NR roughly, to the point where one was crying and you could tell that there might have been potential injury.
There were 0 explanations for what Christina had done.
All of the abuse was unprovoked. Certainly, there's no justification for that sort of behavior. But when you see the video and you see that the kids are just being normal kids, they're not crying, they're not fussing, she does not appear distressed, and then she just lashes out for no reason.
Desiree was not the only mother shocked by leaving her baby with Christina.
We were inconsolable with guilt, knowing that we had unwittingly placed our precious baby girl in the hands of a monster I'm serious.
Moreover, Desiree had to quit her job as a child welfare officer. How could she pretend to help others when she couldn't see the red flags on her own daughter's daycare provider?
She was afraid of you and I didn't see it.
Here I'm being entrusted to find out if this child is safe, and I don't even have the ability to know if my own child is safe.
Now I see it and it breaks my heart.
During her trial, after all the parents' statements, Christina became tearful and apologized to them.
I'm sorry for every amount of pain that it caused you.
She went on to say that she is suffering from a wide array of mental health issues. Well, if that is the case, why did she become a daycare provider? In any case, the judge didn't show Christina much mercy.
And I have kids, and watching those films was just sickening. Parents, in this case, trusted you to care for the most precious thing that they have as their children. And you violated that trust.
She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Luckily, none of the children have suffered long-term effects on their physical health. However, much of a person's personality, including their attachment style, forms very early on. Suffering abuse at the hands of a caregiver can have deep effects on children. They might never trust their partners or even be tempted to be violent towards children when they become adults. Perhaps with the right care and lots of love, Desiree's daughter and the other children in Christina's care will grow up to be healthy, secure adults. Thanks for watching, you guys. Don't be shy, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. See you next time and stay safe.